And away we go. It is the Nightcap right here on BearcatJournal.com. Brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Galactic Fried Chicken. Visit www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Download the app for Android, iPhone, everything Galactic. Make sure you're getting down to Dayton. Tell them to pump it up. Save yourself 15% on your order. Or, get them on Uber Eats. Get that delivery. Have them bring it to your house. And enjoy the Galactic goodness. I think maybe tomorrow. Here, you want to watch somebody be happy? Hold on a second. Let's tell her that we're going to go to Galactic tomorrow night. Live on the air.
Do you eat fried chicken every day?
What do you want to do for dinner tomorrow night? I didn't even train her to do that. That was not set up. That was natural.
She's been asking for 2 days.
He wouldn't get it from me.
Speak it into the microphone.
He wouldn't get Galactic Fried Chicken for me Saturday night.
Yeah, because I had just been driving for 8 hours. We'll go tomorrow.
We better.
She likes Galactic Fried Chicken more than she likes me.
Sounds about accurate.
All right, let's get rolling. I sent you a tweet last night.
Yes.
It's from Kurt J. Stubbs. I don't know who Kurt J. Stubbs is. His Twitter handle is Ohio High School Hoops. So I imagine he works in the industry.
The Around the State podcast host.
Yeah. And his tweet says, "We over-evaluate players. There's a camera or scout at nearly every before school workout, anytime workout, open gym, showcase, camp, open run, fall league, summer league, travel game, high school game, and all-star game. We need to let these kids grow and mature as players, people, without constantly being evaluated under the microscope. Look at it this way. As parents, we see our kids daily, so it's a lot more difficult to recognize the growth they're making physically, mentally, socially, etc. But a relative that sees our kids once a year immediately notices the growth." I thought you were going to put that up.
Oh, I was reading along with you.
I thought you were going to put it up so the people...
That would make the most sense. I thought you meant, do you have it ready to look at with... I'm tired.
Aaron. Come on, man. Come on, man. Was that the old ESPN segment?
Yeah. Keyshawn.
Yeah. So... I think there are some interesting points in here. And this comes to like football and basketball. When it comes to like the how recruiting is covered. I guess in the grand scheme of things, like here's my question. Is it really a bad thing that kids are getting exposure? Like, isn't it on the media outlet not to just relentlessly cover the same kids over and over? Isn't it on us to make sure that we're spreading the love and not just covering the top kids, but like taking a look at kids that are a little bit off the radar, or you hear from a friend of a friend in the business that this is a kid that you need to look at. That's a kid that you need to look at. Like, first off, what's your take on this as somebody that's not in the world that I'm in?
I don't disagree. And
I don't necessarily disagree either, but I don't know that I agree.
I don't entirely agree either. So kind of from my perspective, like, I'm always interested in your takes from AAU, because while they may not be guys that Cincinnati has a shot with, ends up with, any of these things, we are exposed to a lot of guys who are going to get a shot somewhere at some point.
And generally they're guys Cincinnati has watched, taken a look at, made calls on, whatever.
There's some type of connection, but it doesn't mean they necessarily end up with Cincinnati. Now, that said, obviously, we both know that I covered the incoming class last year for the class of 23.
22.
22, sorry. And I would text these guys every week asking them, because it's really hard to find stats on the games, and I was putting out my updates weekly on how the guys were doing in their games. I ran into a couple situations during that time span, and I'm not going to drop any names, but there were some made up stats from kids to me.
Yeah.
You were already committed to playing for Cincinnati.
Right.
Why are you making up stats? Like, I guess I don't understand, but at the same time, they didn't want to tell me. I would just get ghosted if they had a bad game, and I would find out later on that they had a bad game. They just wouldn't respond. They'd apologize later, but I think that's part of it is, they're under this microscope. Like, I have to be at the highest level every single week, and I can't have a bad week because somebody else might pass me in the evaluations. And so I guess I kind of understand in that sense why they're over evaluating, because we talked about this earlier on the podcast tonight. You can't always be at the top of your game. Rayvon Griffith had a bad weekend. That doesn't mean
he had a not great weekend.
Okay.
Like there were periods this weekend, and I this is where I do agree to an extent.
Compared to Rayvon Griffith's standards, he had a bad weekend. Is what
compared to the standards he holds himself to.
Correct.
He wasn't at his best, right? Like the game. Apparently, the first night he was good. He had a really rough game the next morning. Then that night, he bounced back and had a solid game, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, like he didn't, he didn't explode for like 25. I think he had like a 12 or 13 points, something like that. And he kind of bounced back and forth over the weekend on good games and bad games. And you could feel that he was putting a lot of pressure on himself to be perfect. And I think that is the balancing act, right? Like where you get into kids putting this immense pressure on themselves to be perfect, because that's not fair. It's exactly why people always want me to make player comparisons. That's not fair to the kid. Like, I've seen this couple, like that kid is Eric Hicks. That kid is Sean Kilpatrick. There is nothing about that is fair to the kid. When they arrive on campus, right, with 0 games played against college athletes, that the expectation is Eric Hicks, Jason Maxiell, Kenya Martin. Because nobody's ever like
legends of the past.
Yeah, nobody's ever like, that kid's got a lot of Jermaine Sanders to him.
Titus Rubles.
Yeah, Jermaine Sanders helped UC win a bunch of games, played a lot of minutes on a lot of teams and won a bunch of games. But he was never like, he was never the guy in bright lights. Nobody's ever comparing anybody to Jermaine Sanders or Titus Rubles.
We do.
But we probably should. Yeah, we do, because I'm steadfast in that. Like
behind the scenes, you and I, we've talked about different guys.
I've talked about it in public.
But it'll be like it's the dog in Titus Rubles, right? Like
right. But I don't know that is any different if you've seen a kid one time or you've seen a kid 50 times. I think like where this goes wrong is if you just continue to go watch the same kid over and over and over again. You're gonna overexpose the kid, and that's on you as the media outlet. What do we do? I go to Adidas events, I go to Under Armour events, I go to Nike events, I go to independent events. Like, I make sure I'm seeing as many kids as possible. Not just I've been driving 7 hours to Atlanta twice a month to watch Isaiah Collier and Arlington Page.
Well, and I know when I covered the recruiting, like I would only do the camps. I would only do guys that Cincinnati had either extended an offer to or had in for an official visit or things of that nature.
Sure.
But, I wasn't going, not quite on Mick's level where he's
But
visiting.
even Mick is going like, I'm going to this region and I'm going to see 8 schools, and then I'm going to this region and I'm going to see 8 schools.
Yeah.
Like, he's seeing as many kids as possible. That's great for the kids.
Yes.
What's not great for the kids is if you just go to this region and you've got 4 high schools that you go to and you're there every day.
And you only go see the 4 and 5 stars.
Right. Like, that's bad. That's bad for the business. That's bad for the process. But if you're being smart about it, what's the downside? Like, what's the downside to Mick going to a high school, in Northern Ohio that doesn't get a lot of coverage? And all of a sudden he sees a kid that's 6'2", 185, runs a 4.4.
Rangy.
Yeah, rangy, like that wasn't really on a lot of radars. And Mick's like, hey, this kid, and it could be a 2025 kid that's 2 years down the road.
6'2" and 185.
Well, I mean, he's probably 6'1" and like 160 at that point. But you get my point where it's like, okay, well, this kid's going to be a sophomore, and he's going to be a factor on his team as a sophomore this coming season. People should put him on the radar. That's good for the kid.
It's good for
that's where I have issues with, like, what that tweet said is an example of doing it wrong.
Sure. Yes. So I think on that we can agree, right?
Right.
Where you're just setting expectations because of the one time you saw the kid, and they always have to be at that level, no questions asked.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No, that's those are lofty, unrealistic expectations.
Well, like in a football game, the perfect example. You have a great corner. We just watched an entire season of the number 4 pick in the draft where everybody went, nope, not doing that. And so what would happen if you're an amateur scout. or somebody that fancies themselves as an expert in this business that doesn't have the wherewithal yet to really understand it? They would go to that game. The opposing team would never throw to that kid's side, but instead of pointing that out, they would say the kid had 2 tackles, no interceptions, and he really wasn't a factor.
No stats.
Except he dominated the game.
Yeah.
But the untrained eye didn't see it. So I have a hard time understanding where the angle is more exposure is bad in 97% of the cases. Are there 3% where, like, we talk too much about Bronny James? You know why Bronny James is never going to be able to be his dad? Because his dad is 6'9" and Bronny's like 6'2".
Yeah, his what's the younger brother's name? Bryce?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Apparently he's built more like LeBron, and people are already over Bronny, and they're looking on to the younger brother now. Like,
that's not
crazy.
What we've done to Bronny is not fair, because he just didn't hit the growth spurt. He didn't have that summer where he went from 6'2" to 6'8".
Yeah. I don't think he's going to, but
he's pretty filled out. Like, once their calves and their thighs or their ankles.
I'm not allowed to talk about legs. People think
I tried to set you up.
It's fine.
But yeah, that's an example of, like, overexposure. But like a kid like Jason Hewlett,
injured.
He was out. So it's a bad thing for Jason Hewlett if all of a sudden people start going to watch him this fall to get an accurate like read on him coming back from injury, where he's at as a player.
I guess
what his game is about.
Going back to the tweet, though, I guess that's where you can go see the games, but it's where every single workout has to be recorded and put on the gram.
But that's not the scout's fault. That's
the kid looking for clout, and that's totally different.
Like that's different than what the tweet was talking about. The tweet was talking about it's on us as people covering the industry to not cover the industry as much? Huh?
You go with what drives the clicks.
But we don't. Like, do I love clicks? Yeah, sure.
I'm not saying we do that because we're not getting paid on the clicks though. Like nobody's verified.
I get a check on click. Like I get a check on.
Not on Twitter.
Well, no, they don't pay you for shit. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
But
you're not an influencer. You're not verified and getting money from social media in that sense. We're getting.
That's my fault because I just don't believe in it. Well, I could.
That's a story for a different day.
There's a lot of people that yell at me for that, but
you're holding me back from my check mark.
You can get your check mark.
No,
you write the articles.
I don't. I have applied.
You got to write the articles. You got to send them the articles that you're published in the thing. Yeah. Well, I can't help.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard.
Getting verified is hard.
Yeah. I haven't tried. I wouldn't know. All right. Well, that just was something from my perspective, as somebody that's doing this, I get the overarching idea that tweet wanted to get at. I just think it went about it the wrong way because more exposure for kids is a good thing. Getting kids, guess what? I'm a dad. The daughter's going into 7th grade. We're having to start thinking about, what's next, what comes down the road. College is expensive, man.
Yeah.
Do you get that shit paid for? Room, board, food, books, everything?
It's big.
Maybe it's worth, some people sitting in your gym during your 6 a.m. morning workout in the long run. Maybe. I don't know. That's going to wrap it up. We will see you back here tomorrow night. Make sure you join PTP tomorrow night. They'll have a bunch of Corey Blunt, Octavius Ellis, Shaq Thomas, Coriante DeBerry.
Yep.
Previewing the PTP or the TBT. Sorry, the PTP on the TBT. So make sure you check that out, and we'll see you all week. Going to be a busy week right here on the Nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken on BearcatJournal.com.
See ya!